Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Joseph Fink, who is the author of The Halloween Moon, among other books. And I'm going to let you kind of tell people about, for readers who are unfamiliar with your work. I'm going to let you tell them what you write.
Sure. My name is Joseph Fink. I write a lot of things. I am perhaps best well known for writing the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, which is a fiction show about a weird desert town where every conspiracy theory is true. We've written a few Welcome to Night Vale novels, but I've written my first novel for children. That's called The Halloween Moon, which is about Halloween and all the excitement that goes around with it.
That sounds great. So, what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
That's a good question. I think that books that look at the world as more than realistic, as having elements of the fantastic, are this way of letting us think about how the world actually feels to us. I think realistic depictions of the world don't always match with how we feel, because the world can feel very weird and it can feel very scary. And so writing about fantasy within that world can be a way of reflecting how it really feels to us.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. So, what was the inspiration for the Halloween Moon?
In a lot of ways, it just trying to capture the feeling of Halloween. I think the excitement that I get from Halloween. I mean, a lot of the elements of it are very directly based on my childhood, but I would say overall, it was less about me and more about, yeah, just the atmosphere of Halloween, because I think it's a very unique atmosphere that I really, really love.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the book itself?
Yeah, it's about a 13-year-old girl named Esther Gold who loves Halloween more than anything. But this year, something has gone very wrong. Halloween night won't end. The night just goes on and on. Strange creatures start appearing, and every adult in the neighborhood has fallen asleep and can't be woken up. And it's become clear that Halloween will last forever unless Esther Gold does something about it. And as much as she loves Halloween, she doesn't want to be stuck in one night forever.
Ooh, wow. Okay. And what were the steps that you took from your initial inspiration to take it to the finished book?
This all started when I got into a writing residency on the coast of Washington, this little place called the Willapa Bay Artist in Residence, where they just gave me a cabin for a month. And there was like a cook that cooked us 3 meals a day. And I just sat in this cabin and wrote. And I wanted to, because it was such a special experience, I wanted to write something different than what I've been working on. And I'd had this book in my head for a while. And so I just wrote the first draft very quickly. There was a day where I wrote 9,000 words in a single day. I would just get up very early in the morning before it was light and just write and write and write, and then spend the afternoon walking on the beach, which was a very wonderful and lonely month. And then this book just sat basically on my computer for a few years, because I was so busy with other things, until I finally sat down and reread it and started turning it into the story it is now.
Wow. Okay. So, what kind of research went into writing this book?
Oh, I'm bad at research, so very little, as little as I can get away with generally. The other reason I like to write weird stories is because I'm very bad at research, and so I'd much rather just come up with imaginary things than to try to reflect reality in an accurate way, because that I just become very afraid of making a mistake.
Okay. Do you have any favorite research stories?
Again, I did with this book especially. It was based almost entirely on my memories of my childhood. So little to no research other than Googling some place names because it takes place in the neighborhood I grew up in.
Okay. So, those were real. the names?
Yeah, this whole book takes place. I never name it, and I don't name most of the places, but it takes place very specifically in the neighborhood I grew up in. All of the landmarks and the geography of it match exactly that neighborhood.
And did you have to go back to your neighborhood to remember all of these things?
No, it was pretty. I used to just wander a lot as a kid. So that neighborhood is pretty stuck in my head. I mean, I went back pretty regularly. My mom still lived there until a couple of years ago. She moved. And so now I don't think I'll have a reason to go back to that neighborhood, but it still lives in my head.
Okay. So what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out Halloween Moon?
You know, I set a very high expectation for myself with this story. A thing I really love that when a book can pull it off is when every little detail in the book matters, when every little piece ends up falling into place. It's almost impossible to do. But it was a challenge I set for myself with this book, is that I wanted every little detail in the book to have a reason to be there, to have some payoff. And I don't know if I fully succeeded, but it was fun to try.
Aha. So was there one character that you loved or hated the most in this book? In this book?
I don't know. I don't usually have feelings like that about characters because they're all kind of just part of what I'm doing in the story. I never really think of my characters as separate from myself. There's ones that were fun to develop. I think the villain of the story, getting her attitude and the way she spoke was a lot of fun. And Esther Gold, the main character, is very, very similar to me. And so writing that feels very personal. But every character I created, I enjoyed having there because I just enjoyed writing the story.
So did you, are you more of a pantser, or in other words, do you come up with an outline? Did you come up with an outline, or did you just go right into the story, the plot?
I always plan. I'm very structural in the way I think of stories. Before anything else, I come up with a structure. I know about how long it is, how it'll be written, if it's in sections, what points of view. Like I want to know all of that. I often write the ending even very early on because it's helpful to know where I'm going. And so with many of the things I write, I will write the ending, if not first, then in the beginning of the process.
Wow. So do you develop your characters first?
It entirely depends on the story. I start by having an idea that I'm excited about. It's really important that I be excited about the idea because creating anything, especially a novel, is such a long process. And there are really hard and tedious parts of it, parts that just drag on and parts where you're going to hit a wall. And if you're not really excited about the idea, there's no way you'll get through it because you need to be excited about the idea to pull you through all of the places where you just never want to look at this book ever again. So I start with that. And then, as I said, I really think structurally. I try to figure out how long is this book? How is it broken up into? Like about how many chapters and how long are they? Those may seem like silly questions to think of first, but it really helps me to understand what the story looks like before I even come up with anything else. Because for me, once you build a really strong skeleton, which is the structure, you can drape all sorts of weird things on that and it'll work because the structure is so solid.
Okay. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I'm continuing to write the Welcome to Night Vale podcast. It is actually approaching its 10-year anniversary this June, which is a really wild thing to think about. We are restarting the Welcome to Night Vale live tour in March, which is we, toured all over the world with the Welcome to Night Vale show, a full night of theater that anyone can come to. They don't have to know Welcome to Night Vale. And then in 2020, for some reason, we stopped for a while. But we're really excited to get back out on the road. There's a lot of other things I'm working on. The weird thing about being a writer, especially once you get into projects that are with companies like publishers and things like that, is so much of what is taking up all your time right now you can't talk about. And then the stuff you are talking about are all things that you worked on 2 or 3 years ago, and you're like, oh yeah, that thing, I remember writing that. But I'm writing a few different things that I think none of them I can talk about right now.
Okay. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about Welcome to Night Vale?
Absolutely. So it's a fiction show. It comes out twice a month on the 1st and the 15th of every month. That takes the form of community radio from the small desert town of Nightvale, where the paranormal is real and just a day-to-day part of life. People get on with their lives. I started in 2012 with just a few of my friends. And in 2013, it blew up and became, for a bit, the most popular podcast in the world, and then still the most popular fiction podcast in the world. And we started writing books. We've written 3 Welcome to Night Vale novels, that all 3 of which I'm just very proud of. And then, as I said, we started touring the live show, which we've done something like 300 live shows since we started, and it's really become its own wonderful thing. It's become this gathering place for people who are into the weird and who maybe live in a place where the weird is hard to find, and you can come to a theater and we welcome you in and welcome you to a night of weird storytelling.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
It's something I very much miss.
Oh, yeah. I've got some questions for you now about being a writer. What's your favorite part of being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
It's interesting. I mean, I've never been able to be anything else. It's what I wanted to be since I was 3 years old. And I learned what being a writer meant. And I was like that. And it's never changed even a little bit. And so some part of it is I don't have a plan B. I don't have anything else I can or want to do. I feel like when you first have something fall into place, when you write something or put something together and realize, this is good. I remember when I first started writing Welcome to Night Vale, I constantly was starting projects and writing things, and most of them went nowhere. They either were seen by like 2 people or they just never went anywhere at all. And I remember when I started to write Welcome to Night Vale, I told my wife, I think this could be something, because it felt like it. It felt special. And that feeling that something has really turned out well is a really wonderful feeling to have.
Mm-hmm. So what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
The most challenging part is towards the end in the editing. When you're deep in the editing of a book, you've just hit a point where you've stared at that work for so long that you can no longer tell if it's good or not. You've lost all ability to judge whether it's good or bad, which is a really scary feeling for something you're going to put out in the world. But the truth is that a helpful phrase is the only way out is through. Like, you just know that you have to keep doing it. You have to keep making it, and eventually it'll be done. Every time I go into a panic, and every time my wife says to me, have you ever not landed the plane? So every time, eventually I land the plane.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
I mean, the touring live show has allowed us to do all sorts of things. Obviously the exciting ones. We played 2 different West End theaters. We've played a Broadway theater. We played the main stage of the Sydney Opera House, which was a night I will never forget. Our parents flew to Australia to watch us because, we're not the type of people that get to do that twice. That was literally a once in a lifetime experience. But, a lot of the smaller ones too. I remember the very first Night Vale live show we ever did was in a bookstore. It was in the Booksmith in San Francisco. They just cleared out the shelves, and we packed 300 people into a bookstore and did a live show. And it was the first time I'd ever seen, a podcast is such a one-way thing. We made this thing and we put it out into the world, and that was it. And we sitting in the back, this was so early on, I was still running the sound for the live show. So I was sitting in the back of the room watching 300 people react in real time to what we had written, and there was people laughing and crying, and I was crying because I had never occurred to me really that there was real people on the other end of this process.
Wow. It must be incredible just to see the people that are that are listening, where when you're writing, you can't really see the people reading your books.
No, it's an incredibly lonely process for the most part, writing. It's not for artists who like the interaction, although that's sort of the beauty of the live show is we kind of get to do both, is we get to have the lonely life of writing, but when we are able to do the live show, having that direct connection to an audience, there's just nothing like it.
Right. So what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
I mean, the biggest thing is there's just no shortcut to it, of just the only way to write well is the only way to do anything well, which is to practice a lot for years. And for a long time, you're not good at it. I mean, that's like anything, like becoming a surgeon or becoming a violinist. If for a long time you're going to be practicing, you won't be good at it. But the good news is if you practice, you will get better and you will see that. But it can be very frustrating when you're in the middle where you're getting better, but you still aren't quite where you want to be. Learning how to do anything is a very slow process, slow and frustrating process, but A, just know that it works, and B, there's really no real shortcut to it.
This is kind of a similar question, but what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Um, that's a good question. And I don't 100% know what the answer is, other than that, I guess that if no matter how big the thing is, if you just keep chipping away at it, so eventually you're done. Some of these things that I've worked on have felt so impossible at first, so big. Um, but I kept working on them and eventually they were finished and out in the world. And the more you do that, the more confidence you get in that process. So it becomes easier. You start a big thing and you're like, this is so big, but I know I can finish it because I've done it before.
Okay. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you might recommend to other writers who might have helped you with your career?
No, I don't. I'm not a member of any organized organization, but early on, I just made a lot of friends in the downtown New York City theater scene. I moved to New York. I didn't know anyone, and that's just kind of where I started making friends. And that's where Welcome to Night Vale came out of. Everyone working on early Welcome to Night Vale came out of that downtown New York theater scene. And so I would really encourage people, just make friends with other people making things, and really value finding people you like, over anything else. Because if you're making things with people you like, the absolute worst thing that could happen is that you made something with someone you like. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, that's still a really enjoyable thing to do. Having friends in the process is really valuable, way more valuable, I think, than any specific professional organization or writers group.
That's very good advice. Um, now, now some questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I mean, I feel like there's so many things that people don't realize about me because I try not to tell people much about myself. I'm a pretty private person. Um, I live in the woods, I guess, is something I think our closest neighbor is like a quarter mile, half mile away. So um, it's really lovely and quiet here, just here in the middle of the woods.
Uh, that's nice. Um, okay, what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time for your non-writing hobbies and things that you love?
Um, I mean, well, I just had a baby. I have a 4-month-old baby, and so
Oh,
that's kind of a lot of the time when I'm not working
it takes
now.
a lot of your time. Yeah.
Um, I really love baking. Baking is something I've always loved. My mom made bread every week, and so I especially love making bread. That's something we do very regularly in my house. Um, I mean, I really love reading. Like, reading is something I really try to set aside time during the day to do, over kind of anything else. Partly because I think if you're a writer, you have to read. You have to take in order to have the tools to write. But also, I really have always loved it, and it's very important to me to keep. Even as I have a career and a baby, it's important to me to find time to sit down and read.
Right. All right. And what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing or editing?
Well, I'm sitting in my writing space. It's a basement. It's the basement of our house, although it's less dreary than it sounds because it's built into a hill. So I have a window to my left. It's a big desk. I have the desk is kind of one of my most prized possessions because I often like to stand while I work. I'm not very comfortable sitting, and this is a desk that shifts very easily from a standing to a sitting desk. So I very much enjoy that. And then kind of around, I have a lot of just knickknacks from years and years of Welcome to Night Vale. I have all sorts of, you know, fan art and stuff that was given to me hung up. And then over on my left, I have one of the first things I earned in my writing is I won a Los Angeles Times writing contest and won a mouse pad. And so I have the Los Angeles Times mouse pad that I won when I was like 17, I think, to my left.
Wow. Is there any particular, I notice you're just drinking. Are there any particular drinks or food that you might want to have with you normally?
I mean, this is just water, which is generally, I mean, when I write, the only thing I drink is water or coffee. I treat writing as like my workplace, and so I kind of just have a glass of water because it's often dry down here, so I get a little thirsty.
Okay. And when you're writing, do you prefer music or silence? And if so, what kind of music?
I prefer music. It's nice to have that energy, and it kind of writing again is such a slow, tedious process that having any kind of energy to push you forward is really important. I can't have anything with words, and even vocals that aren't words can be really distracting for me. So everything's instrumental. But I have, let's see how long this playlist is these days, going into my writing playlist. So it is 1,303 tracks for a total of 113 hours of just various instrumental songs I've gathered over the years. A lot of it is post rock. I really like post rock as a writing music because it just has a lot of energy.
Okay. And writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them through their work. And do you have any of those, and do they help or hinder you?
No, we don't have any pets, unfortunately. A lot of it is our old life because we had the touring live show. We weren't home for a lot of the year, and so we couldn't. But we really love animals. And again, we live in a rural area. So when I go on a run, an important aspect of that is my wife and I give each other animal reports where we name every animal we saw. There's a lot of farm dogs that just run loose, and a lot of horses and cows and sheep and stuff. So.
Okay. I just have two more questions for you. Where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I normally, excuse me, I normally use this time to take a little plug for Annie's, and I say that that you can get the Halloween Moon and any of your books actually at Annie's by sending us email at Annie's at Annie's Books Worcester. Orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. And you can call us at 508-796-5613, and you can order books from us. So where else can you get your books?
The easiest way probably is to go to welcometonightvale.com. That's night as in the opposite of day, and VLE. That's VALE. That's the website for my podcast, where there will be all the information about that. And then if you click books, there is all the information about not just the Welcome to Night Vale books, but all of the books I've written are listed there, and with links on how to order them and information about them.
Okay, great. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Again, welcome to nightvale.com is probably the easiest. We also have a Twitter account, Night Vale Radio, that we put all our stuff on. Those two are probably the easiest way. Also, if you just want to follow the Welcome to Night Vale podcast, it's available on any podcast app. You can just search for it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And you will actually be reading a portion of, I believe, the Halloween Moon for us in a separate video. So if anyone is interested, you can log on and listen to it or watch it. Okay. So thank you very much, and we will be seeing you later.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.